quite a few people funneling in.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
We'll just give people a little bit of time to funnel in. I know it's early for some of our hosts. If you're on the North American side of the globe, good morning. This is not bad attendance for this early in the morning.
Completely agree. Do you think is most of this I wonder if people can tell us where they're from. I'm assuming mostly it's Europe, right?
Yeah, let's ask. Yeah, if you're joining us, you want to just throw in where you're joining from in the chat. That's always fun to know. I'm joining from Florence, Italy. Richie, where are you?
I'm from Pune, India.
India, okay. And we've got Shifra from the support team that's going to be helping out with any questions in the chat, or if you want to use the Q&A feature, you can use both of those, and then we'll get some time at the end for questions. So let's get started. Welcome, everyone. We are doing a master class on dynamic pricing with a slight focus on pricing for direct booking. My name is Andrew. I'm the director of product at Hospitable. And today we've got a returning champion, Richie Khandelwal. He is the co-founder of PriceLabs. Those of you that are Hospitable customers, I'm sure you're aware of PriceLabs. I think it's our most popular third-party integration, our first dynamic pricing integration. So yeah, I think a lot of people are probably familiar with it, but we could start out at the beginning of the story and give you some time to introduce. Just by the way, people, this is being live streamed. It is being recorded. I think our lawyers require us to tell you that. So yeah, be careful what you say. Be nice and chat. Richie, why don't you introduce yourself? Say hi.
Alrighty. Hey, everyone. My name's Richie. I'm one of the co-founders at PriceLabs. Andrew, thank you for your kindness about saying that most people should know about PriceLabs. But if I can take 10 seconds, or like I said, I like to talk maybe take a 15. Minute or two. Yeah. Talk about what PriceLabs is, right? So we're a revenue management platform. And at the core of that revenue management platform is dynamic pricing, focused on short-term rentals, and it's powered by a very refined and state-of-the-art algorithm, along with market data, and then customizability that all together come together to help you maximize your revenues, right? We help owners and property managers increase their revenues. We've seen revenue increases right from 10% to 40%. Generally, somewhere in 20 to 30% bucket is very common to see. That's in first year. If you're using year after year, then the revenue increase is harder to get every year, sure. unless the economy is different, right? We work with thousands of hosts. We today actively price a little over 280,000 units around the world, right? Majority of them are in US, so about 60% of our business is US, and then remaining in rest of the world. Okay. Me personally, I understand hosts a little bit, because the reason why we came into this business is because I started out as a host on Airbnb, and this is 9 or 10 years ago. So if you remember, Andrew, the 10 years ago of Airbnb, it was a lot about those shared rooms or extra rooms, etc. Right? And so I was in college, and so I was putting out my room on Airbnb, and I said, this doesn't seem right. I'm pricing like $30 or $50 a night flat in Chicago in winters. Who's going to come to the city in winters? And so that was a trigger for me to saying, hey, maybe we need to adjust prices. And Anurag, who's my co-founder at PriceLabs, and I've known him from undergrad, so we go like 25 years back. He was doing revenue management for United Airlines, which was a lucky stroke. And our third co-founder, Sana, who I met through a friend of a friend, was working for Orbitz. Not sure if you remember Orbitz. I don't know if they're still around, but like from the travel industry, right? So we are kind of had this weird dream team that came together. My Airbnb host experience, revenue management experience from Anurag, and travel industry experience from Sana's Orbitz world, right? Coming together to build this platform, and we've been in business since 2014, and I think with Hospitable, I want to say 2017 or 2018. So like a really long journey with Hospitable. Yeah.
Okay, so besides like pricing in Chicago summer and Chicago winter now, what kind of data do you, without giving away the secret sauce of the algorithm, what kind of parameters are you looking at? What does affect pricing for PriceLabs?
It's primarily two key data points, right? One is around what is happening in terms of demand and supply. And number two, what is happening in terms of our predictions around various events, right? So when I say demand and supply, now if I break that down further, we're looking at demand and supply on the short-term rental market. So that's Airbnb, VRBO, right? Certain data suppliers, etc., right? And then we are looking at the demand on hotel market, right? So we're using booking.com for that source, right? And so we're trying to understand, one, what is the demand? And we're also trying to understand what is the supply. So the way that works is you like traditionally 100 properties should be available. We know that on any given day, but if on certain days we see 90 properties available, we know there's slight demand. On some days, if we see only 20 properties available, we know that's a mega demand day, right? And also on the reverse side, we know if there is if I have 90 properties available, but tomorrow suddenly that 90 goes down to 70, I know there's like certain spike that's happened. So we adjust for that, right? So we're looking at all of this data, coming up with our forecast, right? And on the other side of it is events, where we say like basic calendared events, which is like, should your New Year's be higher? Should your Thanksgiving be higher, et cetera, et cetera. And also, hey, there's Formula One in town, right? And suddenly prices go up. Or Taylor Swift concert, which has dramatically increased prices this year. But so if Taylor Swift concert is happening, right? Do we adjust? We forecast how far high up can we go on those dates, right? So that's behind what's happening at a high level in dynamic pricing.
Yeah, I think I read that I think Beyonce and Taylor Swift together was like almost $6 billion boost to GDP.
That's I remember.
Like short-term rental hosts are hopefully getting a good chunk of that. I think.
I know for like earlier last week, I was on a call with an Australian customer, and their rates are right now we are pricing them like significantly higher than what they'd normally charge for those dates, right? It's still I think the Taylor Swift concert is in 2024, so there's quite a long lead time, right? So we don't want to drop rates too low too early, right? So we're keeping the rates high because we know the demand is potentially going to come. Again, that comes from forecasts of seeing other events of similar magnitude.
Okay, so if you're sorry.
No, but that $5 billion, I remember seeing like it's bigger than GDPs of some country, or Taylor Swift will independently save the world from recession and things like that, right? Crazy.
So down to more humble numbers, but saving host 20 to 30% is great. What's your pricing model? I assume that would be this would be revenue positive to start using PriceLabs if I'm saving 20 to 30% or increasing my revenue.
Increasing,
20 to 30%.
Yeah. So we charge. We have one primary model, which is we charge a fixed fee based on number of properties that you have, right? So if you have one property, it's about $20 a property. If you have 2 properties, it's about $17 a property, and then it scales down as you add more properties, right? But also we have a percent billing model. So especially like if you have a property that has $60 ADR or less, US dollars or less, right? You may want to consider our percent model, because then where we charge a percentage of your revenues. So that can be lower for you. Otherwise, most of our customers end up being in that fixed fee model.
Okay. So bringing it around to the direct booking side of things, which is my focus at Hospitable, and spent a lot of time in our town halls talking about direct booking, getting set up. Is there really anything different that you have to consider when you get into adding a direct booking channel to your other OTAs when it comes to pricing? Like what is the approach that you recommend?
So if you're as a host adding a direct booking website, I think there are a bunch of revenue management levers that you can think about. But specifically coming to pricing, number one is make sure you have a very good channel manager. Plug Hospitable, so that you have the rate parity between between your OTAs, which is like Airbnb or VRB or whatever else you have, and your direct booking website, right? So you want to have a rate parity. Now there are two schools of thoughts in this, and it's up to the individual how they think about it, right? But school of thought one is you want to keep your net take same, right? So what I mean by that is, say Airbnb charges you, I'm not sure if for Hospitable if they charge 15% or 3%, but say Airbnb charges you 3%.
It's a 3% host take,
3%.
right? So from your payout. Yeah.
So Airbnb charges you 3%, and VRBO charges you, I think, Andrew, you'd know this better, but some number, let's say 12%. Let's say 12%, right? So what you have is, say you have $100 as your price. On Airbnb, your price would be 100 plus that 3%. On VRBO would be 100 plus 12%, and then on your direct booking website will be $100, right? So that's school thought one, where you want to keep your net take same, right? Regardless of where you get bookings from, right? The other school of thought, which I generally prescribe to, is to keep rate parity across channels, right? So what I mean by that is, on Airbnb, I would charge, if I'm charging $100, I'm charging $100 on VRBO, and I'm charging $100 on my direct website. Particularly, maybe between OTAs you don't have rate parity, but at least Airbnb and direct bookings website you have rate parity. So I'm charging, say, $103 on Airbnb. I would charge $103 on my direct booking website, and then the extra $3 that I have, because I don't have to pay that commission to Airbnb, I have a few costs that, of course, my direct booking website has, right? My marketing costs, any of my promotions that I want to run, anything else that I want to run, that is where that is going to come out of from that $3, right? So I like to maintain that rate parity between your Airbnb and your direct booking website, and then give it away as promotions, right? The number two thing that I would say is, Airbnbs and VRBOs and Booking.coms, they've created a massive engine that they get a lot of visibility, and hopefully your properties, if they're optimized on these platforms, they're getting a lot of visibility, right? To get visibility on your direct booking website is a little bit harder, right? Of course, not saying it's impossible. I know some hosts that do an amazing job of getting visibility on their direct booking website, right? But you want to make sure that your prices on your direct booking website are optimized, because you're going to have only a few shots at the basket, right? And so you want to have good prices, right? You don't want to have, you get a few customers and your prices are just like crazy high and they're not adjusted to what the market is charging, they're not going to book, right? Or you've not adjusted to Taylor Swift concert and your prices are extremely low, and you get that booking and you really didn't want that booking, right? So you want to make sure, even on your direct booking website, and more so on your direct booking website, that you're adjusting to market. And number two, rate parity, two schools of thoughts, like I discussed.
Okay. Yeah, I think most of our hosts, it'd be interesting. We could I could set up a poll if I had a free hand at the moment, but I think most of our hosts are doing the net take strategy, and definitely I would push back on direct, because like, what is the advantage then to the guest if they're not saving money? I think that for the guest, that's one of the primary polls, is like, I'm going to use your direct site because I know I'm going to save money, because it's not just that 3% on Airbnb, right? It's like their Airbnb is charging a 14% guest service fee.
True.
So there's a pretty wide gap between Airbnb's
actually
cost
15%.
to the host versus 17 versus the direct, right? And so if the guest is seeing rate parity on their direct site versus Airbnb, they're, why am I doing that? You know, and because I think in their minds they're probably taking a little bit more risk. You know, there's not a brand name behind it, unless they know that host personally, and just want to do that out of charity to them, because they know the host is getting a richer take. I'd say, definitely their expectation is the price is different.
Yeah, but I would take that 17%, right? I'd keep my parity rates, but take that 17% in as a promotion, right?
Yeah,
or
so some people get it, some people are happy to book the same.
Yeah, exactly, right? Or you may have a promotion which is like the last 30 days, and you may have like a far out promotion, or like the early bird promotion, etc., right? So you're now playing with two things, right? Your net take stays the same, your prices are paired with Airbnb, but you're able to capture this psychological influence of, oh, I am getting that discount if I book from this site, and I'm getting this promotion if I book from this site, right? So I think that is how I would think about this rate parity with promotions or with discounts. Is because if you don't do discounts, some of them are going to come and ask you if you have discounts or not, right? Etc.
Yeah.
So that's how you could potentially use it.
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of feedback from our hosts that, I mean, they're telling us, obviously, their customers are rate shopping like anybody would. And that's what we made some changes around, like when to display taxes, when not to display taxes. You want it to match up. And so when that rate shopping is happening, you want it to be fair. I think there's like some taxes that Airbnb doesn't collect that our hosts are still liable for that we're collecting. And so then the feedback to that host is, okay, if that's the case, then you would also want to put that in your markup rate because that's revenue for you. And you want to recognize that, and the price to Airbnb should reflect that they're not collecting all the taxes you're liable for.
Exactly.
But I digress. What do you see, like, okay, your ideal hospitable host who's using PriceLabs, what are they doing well that maybe some hosts haven't figured out? Is there something that some hosts miss?
Not really. Like I don't know if there's an ideal hospitable host, but because
they're smarter
really
than the
depends.
average host.
But it really depends on the user, right? What I mean by that is you have 1 property, you have 5 properties, you have 50 properties. It could vary, right? But let's assume you're like a 1 to 2 listing user, right? And generally, I think your goal is you have the property on mortgage, you want to pay off the mortgage, you want to maximize your income, probably also have a second job, so or you have like a day job, and this is your secondary source of income, right? And
you want to make it as passive as possible.
As passive as possible. Time savings becomes a crucial factor as well, right? And so if that's you, right, I think it is important to think about a few levers in that, than to saying like, if you're going to use a pricing software, or if you're going to adjust your own pricing, right, know and expect that your booking windows are going to change. And what I mean by booking windows is normally I get bookings 30 days in advance, right? But if I'm trying to get my maximum money for, say, again, going back to Taylor Swift concert, right? On average, everyone's booking 180 days in advance. You don't want to be the 180 days in advance. You want to be that 90 day in advance, so that because you want to be one of the last ones to book, right? So one of the things that we see people getting nervous about, oh, my booking window is changing, right? But that's expected. Your booking window is expected to change, especially if you're trying to increase rates, right? The number 2 thing that I think some people do is for dynamic pricing or for their own rates is they set their minimum thresholds too high, to saying I'm not going to go below this, right? Remember when you like we're all in the business of selling room nights, right? We're not selling laptops. If I don't sell a laptop today, I can sell it tomorrow, and I can sell it day after tomorrow, or whatever, right? Room nights are perishable, right? So if I don't sell it tonight, I don't sell it tonight, right? So while you have to be conscious about like the damage to your property, the type of the guests that you're going to attract with your pricing, etc., right? But especially for last minutes, especially for low seasons, especially for like the gap days that you have, be flexible about how much you want to charge, right? I have a list of these. The next one that I see generally happen is benchmarking your properties, right? Oftentimes, and I am guilty of that as well, and I'm sure Andrew, you're guilty of it, right? We all love our homes, right? We think our homes are absolutely amazing, which is true for us, right? But we have to consider the customer's viewpoint, right? Sometimes our home could be absolutely amazing, but the customer segment that is coming to our market, they don't really care about that amazingness. They have, say, a very bare minimum need, right? And so they may not be willing to pay as high, right? So you have to really set that comp set really well, to saying, who do I really compete with, by understanding the guest, right? So those are the 3 that I would say. Understanding that the booking window is going to change, the minimum price is sometimes set too high, and number 3, being realistic about your comp set by understanding the guest segment really well.
And how do you know when you have that right? So you get started and you're kind of monitoring it quite closely. Eventually, you can probably kind of set it and leave it. So what are the goals that kind of tell you, okay, I think this is like the sweet spot for those values?
Yeah. Of course, use PriceLabs, but regardless of we using PriceLabs or not, right? What you're really trying to do is you're trying to say relative to market, relative to a generalized concept, not exactly lookalike concept, but slightly generalized concept. How am I doing in terms of revenue or occupancy, right? Whatever goals you set for yourself, right? Am I ahead of the market? Am I behind the market? And that's what you're really trying to do, right? And you're really trying to stay ahead of the market, right? So if market is 60% occupied, I want to be 65% occupied, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if the market is for Taylor Swift already 60% occupied, I don't want to be that person because I know it's 180 days out. I want to be slightly later for that high demand day. But in general, what you're trying to do is you're trying to maximize that occupancy for your property and maximize your RevPAR, which is a metric that we use, revenue per available room or revenue per RevPAN in short-term rentals, revenue per available night, right? That is what you're trying to maximize, but you're really trying to compare it against the market to saying, are you ahead of the market, right?
Okay. And while we're on the topic of market, let's see. We've got people kind of all over in the chat, mostly US, it looks like. But yeah, London, New Zealand, Spain. Are there any market trends that you're noticing? We're kind of in like I guess we're in still this post-pandemic kind of travel boom. But
Yeah.
I know I hear from hosts that are talking about they're in markets that have oversupply of short-term rentals. Like, how do you look at your market? Like, I guess we're kind of touching on it with benchmarks, but how do you approach your market, local, macro, micro, all that?
Yeah. So I think what's happening in markets is it's really varied. If you ask two people in two different cities, it's like really varied, right? And sometimes just even in the same city, the customer segment that you're targeting, it can really vary, right? So I don't think so. There is like one single answer to saying what is happening in the market. Of course, all of us have heard about the Airbnb boom of 2022, which was like the generalized trend. And some of us have heard about the Airbnb bust of 2023, although we're not seeing as terrible as some of the news that went out, right? But there is some slowdown in the markets, right? And then Europe had a completely different scenario over the last 2 years, right? Where lockdowns and not lockdowns and open markets and not open markets. And this year's like an amazing year related to last couple of years, right? So it really depends on hyper locally what's happening in your market. And by market, then it really becomes your customer segment, right? So if you're in, I take an example of Chicago, right? If you're in Chicago, and if you're right next to the football stadium, you're hyper locally competing against that football stadium for that football stadium audience, right? You don't really care about what's happening maybe 30, 50, 100 miles down from the area, right? But if you're in Smoky Mountains, maybe you care what's happening even 30, 40 miles out and not so much hyper locally, right? So it really depends. If I can pitch PriceLabs, there are two things that you can do, right? There is one simple free tool that is on our website called STR Index, Short-Term Rental Index, right? Where we show you what's happening for each country. And for some countries, it's broken down by states. So for US, it's broken down by states. I want to say France, it's broken down by states. Spain, it's broken down by, they're not called states, but I don't know what they're called, but it's broken down by provinces, I guess. So it's broken down by that. And what you can see is one, what's happening in terms of supply in that market. Number two, you can see your occupancy trends in that larger market now, right? To saying are the occupancies higher or lower, and compared to last year, compared to the year before that, compared to the year before that. So you can see all of that for free, and then you can also see what's happening in terms of nightly rates or RevPAR metric that we talked about, right? So that's completely free. The number two is we have market dashboards as a tool. So if you connect, for example, PriceLabs to Hospitable, and if you're not if you don't want to use PriceLabs for the dynamic pricing service that we talked about earlier, right? You can still leverage market dashboards from PriceLabs, and market dashboards allow you to see your market hyperlocally. You can literally determine the point where you want to be on your map, a circle radius, then you can see what's happening in that market, supplies up, supplies down, what's happening in occupancies relative to last year, et cetera, right? So yeah, like if you're using PriceLabs with Hospitable, you get like 1 month of market dashboard free where you can see this data.
Okay. Yeah, we see, I think, some hosts responding to market conditions and moving into midterm bookings. We did, my colleague Emily, actually from the product team, did a great podcast that's on our YouTube channel on midterm bookings. And she spoke with a couple of women that are doing, basically they're focused on travel nurses. Like that is a booming industry in the States. And so they design their Airbnbs for that. And yeah, it definitely, I think, leads into availability and pricing and how you do that. Like, can we talk about midterm booking as a strategy and how PriceLabs works with that? Is that different?
It is. So one, midterm can be a very efficient strategy. Know that midterm by design will pay less than short term, right?
Yeah.
Like on average, right? But in certain markets, midterm may be better because there's no short-term rental demand, right? But on average, you're thinking about a curve, right? This is a risk-return curve, which is if you get a long-term tenant in your property, you're going to make some yield. If you get a midterm tenant, you're going to make slightly higher yield. If you're going to get short-term rental guest in your property, you're going to make a higher yield, right? Generalized, right? But it could vary by the market. So midterm is a fantastic strategy, and we are seeing quite a lot of hosts, like you said, right? Focusing on travel nurses, focusing on just like remote workers, focusing on people that are
relief is one I've seen. Like some people are putting their direct inventory on like Craigslist, or they're working with relief organizations. If you have a disaster,
exactly, yeah. So we're seeing quite a bit of that as midterm as a strategy. It's one thing to think about is it's not just the top line, you also have to consider the profitability, right? Because midterm, like you don't have as many turns, you don't have to do as many cleanings, probably you don't have to do
you don't have
as many operational needs
100% at a month,
exactly, right? Your mental bandwidth is a little bit free, right? So I think midterm's a fantastic strategy. We're seeing quite a bit of it happen in the market, right? A lot of people are doing it. Do you price differently between midterm and short-term rentals? 100%, right? Because you like your short-term rental again is priced a lot higher because you're not considering that you're going to get 100% occupancy. Your midterm rentals is priced a little bit lower because you know you're going to get higher occupancy. So net your revenue kind of stays the same or maybe slightly lower, slightly higher, right? Where it becomes really important on midterm side is that you know and understand your stay restrictions really well, because you don't want to have your midterm calendar just wide open and someone can book 1 night and 2 nights. You really just want to take those 30 nights, right? But if you don't have a booking and the next 7 days, 10 days, 15 days are open, you may want to drop and be okay with taking that short-term rental, right? Again, we talked about perishable inventory for a room nights, right? And on the reverse side, you get a midterm booking, you don't want the next booking to be like 50 days out, and so, or maybe 15 days out, and you have this 15-day gap now. What are you going to do, right? So there are a lot of strategies in place that you can do with stay restrictions on midterm side, right? That we work with quite a bit, and if you're interested, reach out to PriceLabs. Or I think if you Google midterm PriceLabs recipe, you'd find that detail.
Cool. Just maybe a couple last questions before we open it up to the audience Q&A. What are you guys working on now? What's the state of the art in the industry for dynamic pricing? Is there anything changing? What's coming next?
I was expecting this question, and I've been told to be tight-lipped about it right now because
I'm always giving away company secrets at Hospitable.
I'm scared of speaking more, but yeah. So we have a a pretty incredible release coming out in the next couple of weeks, right? We think it's going to be like a game changer, a breakthrough in terms of when it comes to dynamic pricing and revenue management. Not that we're changing what dynamic pricing means or revenue management means, but just like the demands of the market and users have really shifted over the last 3 years. And yeah, that's all I can say without saying a lot. But look out for in the next couple of weeks, there's a major release that we're coming out with where we're going to talk about what's changing with dynamic pricing and PriceLabs.
Okay, nice teaser there. Okay, do you have any final tips for hosts then when it comes to pricing before we open it up?
I think like be in the middle when it comes to like be rational. I see some people get into just too analysis paralysis of the mode. So what I mean by that is, oh, why is this date higher? Why is this date lower? Or like, do I need to tweak every single day? Do I need to increase everything or change everything? Don't get into analysis paralysis, but also don't be like, I don't want to do anything like $100 a night or $500 a night is what I will charge. Play in the middle.
Okay, great. Maybe I'll preempt one question from the audience before we start. AirbBnB has smart pricing. Why do I need a third-party dynamic pricing tool? This one comes up quite a bit.
There are quite a few reasons. Let me start off with, so one, if you'd Google AirbNB smart pricing, should I use or something like that, you'll get your answer in various blogs, including PriceLabs blogs. But let's go back to very basics, right? AirbNB at the end of the day wants to get as many bookings, right? But they're also competing with other platforms that are trying to get bookings, right? So their incentive is to be priced optimally or lower than some of those platforms, right? So that's number one. Number two, we talked about beating the market, right? AirbNB has no incentive to help you as an individual beat the market, right? AirbNB collectively wants to maximize their revenue, not you as an individual want to maximize the revenue, right? So which is why you see some absurdities, right? Like some prices being very low, some prices being very high. So that's number two. And then number three, they're also in this inherent dilemma of, are they host friendly or are they guest friendly, right? So where do they play in that segment? So those three factors make it hard for any OTA. So for example, I know in US and in our world, Booking.com is not as popular, right? But Booking.com is like a force to reckon with on the hotel side, and particularly in Europe, right?
Yep.
They used to have a pricing platform that they shared, right? Because they were like, this isn't helping either way, because it's like there's a natural conflict to the business in that model.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make one comment on that, but just if you're in the audience and you want to participate, come up on stage, ask a question live, go ahead and raise your hand. You can do that if you're in the Zoom call. If you're on another live streaming platform, unfortunately, we don't have you here, but we're happy to take some questions from the audience. And yeah, the one point I was going to make on the smart pricing is like, yeah, you imagine that in many ways the guest is the first customer for AirbNB, and if they're trying to maybe say activate a new user of their app, they want to give them the best experience possible. They want to give them a very good deal, right? And make a lifelong customer out of them. If that's your property that gets the good deal because of smart pricing, well, that might not be your incentive to do that for that one user that is not your customer. It's Airbnb's customer. But yeah, we don't like to be too hard on the OTAs. They definitely serve a purpose. Even if you're doing direct booking, they're providing a lot of utility.
I think this is a fantastic purpose, right? Like they're really useful, right? But at the same time, you have to know where their incentives lie, right? So that you can maximize your own revenues.
Yeah. I'll take a question from the chat. Bill was asking, how do you guys stack up against the competition? He might be looking at Wheelhouse or AirDNA. How do you guys kind of compare against the comp set? What makes you special?
Difficult question to answer. Depends on who the user is, right? If you're a large user versus a small user. So Bill, not sure in terms of properties, right? But if like I can go step by step. If I think about algorithm, we have the largest data science team. Watch out in a month's time for our release also, right? But sorry.
You're giving some hints here.
but we really spend a lot of time on our algorithms to make it as good as great as possible, right? Number two, I think we are one of the few platforms that collect their own data. So we don't use any other platform to get data. We get our own data from various platforms, right? So we have a lot of control in how we get that data, how we process that data, how we can manipulate that data, which feeds our algorithm. Number three, if you are one of the hosts who don't want that automated algorithm but want control, I think we have the most sophisticated set of controls across the board for you to be able to leveraging whatever you want to leverage. And then finally, it comes down to understanding your market. So if you like, I think, again, I would go back to in terms of flexibility of how much data that you can access from PriceLabs. It's just like a crazy amount. And finally, I want to say that we are the cheapest, but I'm not. It depends on your situation and what discounts you can get from other services.
Yeah, and like you said, you guys do have, you can pick your revenue model, your pricing model.
Yeah.
That fits you. Okay, we had Mihai had a question in the Q&A. How does PriceLabs pick, kind of optimize between similar listings? So what are the criteria besides basic like bedroom counts? Does it take into consideration amenities, the finishes of the house? How does that work?
So yeah, this is where I went back to, right? There are two places where you want to figure out how you want to like when I think about dynamic pricing, there is the relative benchmarking, which helps you understand where do you stack rank in the market, in which cases you want to take into account your exact bedroom sizes. You may want to take into certain amenities. You want to take in some of the other things into account to saying, in general, I am a $200 property or a $500 property or a $50 property, right? So that's one side of it, right? The second side of it is thinking about your comp sets that help you understand the elasticity of the market and like the supply and demand of the market, right? There, based on our research, we have seen that the guests need change quite often, right? Like guests are comfortable shifting between bedroom types. They're comfortable shifting between I need a pool, but it's okay if I don't have a pool, right? So like it's not as straightforward as in the hotels where I have a 5-star versus 4-star versus 3-star, right? So those needs change. So for like setting up that average price, you want to get granular and you want to understand that really well. But when you're thinking about pricing adjusting based on the market, right? You don't want to be like we consider a broader market set, generally plus minus couple of bedroom sizes, and also considering like the quality, right? Like they're not ghost listings, they're something that's actually available, something that's actually bookable, right? Because we're trying to like at a broader level understand what is the supply and demand pattern. And then what we do showcase is we have a compare competitor calendar. Often, I think recently I learned it's also called the enemy method. So what you can see in pull in PriceLabs is you can see your prices and you can see say 10 other Airbnb prices, and you can literally see like the tape chart to saying how each of those people are pricing for any given day, right? But so like those are the three things. But for dynamic pricing, we want to consider a broader set, not narrow set.
Okay. Yeah, we had one other question from the Q&A. What do you recommend as far as like how much attention do I need to give to monitoring my prices? Am I checking in daily, weekly, monthly?
Yeah.
How often do I have to review my setup?
Yeah. So if you're a new user, maybe for the first 2-3 days, you're just making sure that you've fine-tuned it, done good with it, right? Then you get into like a weekly cycle initially to make sure your base price is set right, like the average price that your relative positioning, right? And then any other tweaks that you want to make. Sometimes people start with one notion and they say, oh, but I want this control and I want 2 nights minimum and my lower minimum price needs to be lower, etc. Right? So in order to refine those controls, you may want to come in weekly, but after a couple of weeks, you may want to shift that to monthly. Now, this is for again, I'm assuming you're a 1-2 listing user, right? If you have 30 properties, if you have 50 properties, if you have 500 properties, right? Your behavior will change in terms of how often you come, right? So for example, if we have like a customer with 500 properties, they'd come in daily because they're trying to do something with each property.
Okay. Yeah, we had a comment here. It looks like it disappeared, but maybe an interesting topic. Aggressively changing your rates. Is there a downside to that? Is it like, as far as a strategy, like is there a downside to having like extreme volatility, I guess is the question getting at. Here it is. The most aggressive, most dynamic pricing intuitively makes the most sense to me, and that is what I use. Yet I see almost no one else doing pricing that is so aggressively dynamic or volatile. So I wonder, what are the disadvantages to very dynamic pricing?
Very dynamic pricing, simply said, is risky, right? It's same as if I take an example of how you want to invest your money, right? Bitcoin versus stock market versus certain mutual funds versus your fixed deposits or CDs or whatever, right? Each of them, like everyone should be investing in Bitcoin, but they're also inherently risky, right? Very dynamic pricing is also inherently risky, right? To saying, so it boils down a little bit to your risk threshold. Of course, PriceLabs adjusts your risk threshold as you come closer to the date. So we taper that down. So you just have to know what you're doing to be able to manage that, and it's not everyone's cup of tea. So like some people make a ton of money on Bitcoins, but some don't. You want to understand what you're doing.
I think you're also exposing kind of what your window is for negotiating. So I think a lot of direct bookings, there is an element of negotiating, like maybe you're coming from an inquiry from an OTA, you're returning guest. If I can go on your OTA channel and I can kind of see your pricing strategy by looking at dates, and I can see that, oh, you're offering this inventory for $50 a night here, but $200 a night here. Well, why can't I ask you to offer for $50 for my itinerary, right? Yeah. And you kind of then are revealing your hand, perhaps, if you're being too aggressive. They realize maybe where you're potentially vulnerable. That is, yeah, we're working, like the current feature we're working on with the direct is an adjustment feature, which is kind of coming out of that. I think a lot of hosts, after they're making a booking, are kind of saying like, hey, can we make it a little bit, richer, or, they're negotiating and are hosting the ability to kind of provide a discount after the booking has happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. One additional thing that I want to add is if you're too aggressive, say if you're pricing too high, and if there's an expectation mismatch in terms of price and the quality of the property, right? That can lead to bad reviews, which can lead to then lesser reviews, right? So while it's great for that booking, but it can be detrimental in the future, right? So you want to rationalize a little bit, but you want to be realistic.
Yeah, you want 5-star reviews still. You want people to feel like they have a good value.
Correct. But again, you have to understand the market, right? Again, I go back to the Taylor Swift concert. Like if someone's not expecting to pay crazy amount with a not so okay property, I think they're not being realistic, right? But in general, you may want to be like a little bit realistic, because some dynamic pricing algorithms, including ours, if you don't give us a top limit, and if the market is really there for the squeeze, we will take the squeeze, right? Because then it's hard for us to say no to the money, right?
Yeah. So we had I think maybe a question from chat talking about the other side, not the top limit, but the bottom limit. Like, what is there a formula, or is a way of thinking about, okay, my base price is here. How do I get to a minimum price that I want to move the inventory if it's going to go, unsold? How do I set a minimum price and feel comfortable with that?
Yeah. Generally, the rule of thumb that I use, if I don't know anything, I would say if you know your base price, 25 to 30% lower than your base price is what your minimum price should be, right? If you
Okay.
are a PriceLabs user, pop into your neighborhood data, see where the 25th percentile of the market is, generally, and if your market does not have very high demand in general, that is where you want to play. So that's the other lever to think about minimum price, right? And then finally, the last lever, which is a little bit harder, is for you to understand what your break-even price points really are, right? To like if you have a mortgage, to really understand what your break-even price points are, and use that as a minimum price. So easy rule of thumb: 25 to 30% lower than your base price. If you want to look at data, pop into neighborhood and data and understand how low do you want to go relative to the market. And then if you understand your break-even values, then that's your minimum price.
Okay. And then, Magali, hello. If you want to get up on stage, you're welcome to. So I think she's asking kind of like, how does short-term rental market price off of the regular rental market pricing? Like I'm not exactly sure to justify guests looking for short-term rental properties at regular rental market pricing. I assume if you're pricing a short-term rental at the same cost of like a midterm or long-term rental, you're probably not doing your job right. You're leaving a lot of money on the table. But okay, I think
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I agree with you, Andrew, which is like if you're pricing it like the regular rental market, then you're taking a lot of risk for no reward. Right?
Have you actually done the cost benefit, or not the ROI that you're actually going to clear?
Correct. And plus
your expenses at the end of the day.
Yeah, and realize like you're also taking in a lot of costs, and not just the risk of that property booking, but you're also taking in a lot of costs, right? Damage to your property, the turnarounds, the cleans, etc. Right? So you have to factor all of that in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've pretty much covered all the questions, unless anyone sticks their hand up in the next few seconds here. Richie, you have anything else you wanted to leave us with?
No, normally I would talk about what's new, but like we've discussed,
you can't talk about that.
Can't do that. So yeah.
We do have one hand here. So let's see. Where is this? Allow to talk. There we go. All right. Mihai, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, you can unmute.
Yep, thank you very much. I was quite active in the Q&A.
Yep.
Hey, Mihai.
Basically, I have a couple of questions. So
sure.
One, there is a school of thought for the last minute booking to increase it actually instead of decreasing. I was wanted to know what's your thoughts on that. Basically, to do similar to how the plane tickets go, to increase it. Second, PriceLab has a calculator to check how much property will estimate to make based on the address and the number of bedrooms. We use that calculator when we do like case studies for some of our clients. We're a company that manages properties, but I found that calculator not being that reliable. In the next release that you are saying that is going to come, will be some changes there, or will there be some more explanations of how that works? And I think I had one more question. Wait.
Mihai, I won't remember your questions. Write them down so that I can answer the first one, and then the very first one was I've already forgotten.
The last minute pricing. So
last minute pricing, yeah.
Oh, that's all. That's all.
Yeah. So the last minute pricing one, it depends on your market, right? If the market has a supply crunch and you expect the demand to really come in, yes, you would increase prices, right? But if the market does not have a supply crunch, right, and there's just oversupply, then you're shooting yourself in the foot, right? What airlines are able to do, because there are few of these, right? Not that they collude, but they just have limited controlled inventory that everyone knows. Like you can't like the inventory is not changing as dramatically on airline side as it's changing on the short-term rental side, right? It's not like tomorrow a new house will come up or a new plane will come up with extra seats, right? You have like very like the supply chain in airlines is very, very, very different, right? And number two, what they've also been able to do is like generally airlines, I like back in the day, airlines actually used to discount last minute prices. I don't know if Andrew, you've seen this. I've leveraged that quite a bit, but after a point, they realized that like a large majority of the users are traveling for need and not for fun. Because they're traveling for need, they really need to take that flight or that seat, and so they're able to upcharge, right? And then if the whole market is upcharging, that's great, right? So again, in the short-term rental market, if everyone's charging high, then great, right? But if you're the only one charging high and everyone else is decreasing their prices, then you're not going to get booking, right? So it really depends on the market. But specific to last minute, when we do the new release, we're going to talk about that also in a couple of weeks. Coming to the revenue estimator question, I'm assuming, Mihai, you're using that free tool that's on the website, right? So it uses generic data. What you can do is use our market dashboards where you can get a little bit more granular in understanding. And also we are specifically working on a revenue estimator product for property managers, because we understand this need of talking to owners and understanding with owners, right? What's happening. So we're specifically talking about that. I have your name down, and we'll reach out to specifically understand your situation around the revenue estimator and what you need. Yeah, but like if you're using that free tool, it's more generic, and yeah, it's averaging out a bunch of things, which may be different for your use case.
Thanks for the questions, Mihai. We've got one more to bring on the stage here. Yeah, I think as a guest, my assumption would be that the inventory is going to be more expensive by way too long. That would give me anxiety. So I'm never willing to try this experiment. And when I just travel on my own and wait till the last minute to book something.
Yeah, but see, like this is Andrew. I'm assuming you're mostly traveling in high season.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so like because you're traveling in high season, the inventory gets shrunk. So which is why you're like getting one of the last to book inventories, right? But for that specific inventory, if you booked 5 weeks before, generally it would be in short term, it would be higher than what it is last minute, right? But relative to the market, yes, you're booking the higher end of the property.
Okay, interesting. JT, you're on the stage. What questions do you have?
Hey, good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Hey,
Yeah,
JT.
we can hear you.
Okay, so when I first entered short-term rental market, I have property in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and I was introduced to AirDNA as a way to look at their rentalizer. And at that time, when I plugged in 3-bedroom, 2-bath, Gulf Shores, you know, it told me 60% occupancy rate at an average of $328 a night. And when I actually renovated my house and actually put it on the market and started looking using the enemy method, I discovered that my house was only going to, at least based on what I thought, was only going to bring maybe $250 a night on average. Now, I don't know if, and I just started in March of 2023 was my first guest. Yeah, the houses performed very well. Houses, because I actually have 2 of them. They performed very well March through July. So my question is, but I was never. I mean, I'm not averaging anywhere near $328 a night, and I haven't been able to go do my math on occupancy rate. But my question is, I felt like maybe how much can I trust this data set? And I don't mean to specifically talk about AirDNA because I know that you're PriceLabs, but can I trust PriceLabs accuracy? Because I feel like that $328 average night wasn't really accurate in my case. I'm lower, and I don't understand. because I kind of projected my models on a $328 a night. If I was averaging that, I'd be hitting it out of the park, but I'm averaging maybe between $200 and $250.
Yeah. Got it. Makes sense. So of course I can't speak to ADNA. I have no idea, but I can generally speak about the industry, right? Which is all of us are trying to forecast as well as we can, right? But at the same time, we don't know where the market conditions are going to go, right? So for example, Gulf Shore, Alabama in 2022 might have been a lot more hot market than in 2023. Also in 2022 might have had a lot lesser inventory than in 2023 when you really came onto the market, right? And so because of that supply change or the demand change, the price that you can get from the market can be very different, right? If you're generally thinking about how to really underwrite your property, I am no expert at this, but I was telling Andrew I was in oil and gas before this, before coming to PriceLabs. What we would do there is we'd take the average, we'd understand that that's our average case, but we'd really base ourselves on a low case, which is like a certain percentage lower, right? That would give us that comfort level to saying, I have comfort that I'm not going to really run into troubles, right? So that's the big thing, because markets have really shifted between 2022 and 2023 in some places. Not as familiar with Gulf Shore, but that might be one of the things. And number two, honestly, JT, maybe that you're not just charging enough. Maybe you're getting nervous a little bit too early and dropping your rates and not trying to push those rates.
Got it. Thank you. Wait, one quick question. Earlier in the podcast, in the webinar, you mentioned when direct booking that you might take the savings, like Airbnb charges the guest 17%, and you talked about taking those savings and offering it as a promotion. And I can't remember exactly what struck me in my mind, but it seemed like the Airbnb is not charging me 17%. They're only charging me 3%. So it sounded like you were saying, use the 17% savings. I'm thinking, wait a minute, there's not. Do you recall it? I'm sorry. Do you recall?
Yeah, I can talk about that briefly. So if you look at the typical Airbnb fees, the guest fee I think is 14% and the host fee is 3%. So that's where we get to the 17. If you look at our products, so direct basic, there's no fee. You're just going to get your 3% fee to Stripe to pay for your transaction. So that's something where, okay, you do a 3% markup fee if you want to then net your payout. Direct premium is the one that's a little bit more complicated because we're charging 6% plus $10 to cover the payment processing fees. We don't take anything out of the payout. Now you can play with that equation. So it's generally going to be 10 to 14%. My cat says hi. 10 to 14% cheaper for you compared to Airbnb, as long as your ADR is not under $100. If you play with the markup rates, you can say, I want richer payouts or I want to save my guests more, right? And so that allows you to kind of control that and do, in a way, a complement onto dynamic pricing. So PriceLabs is going to send you a base rate and Hospitable is going to apply your markup rate before they send it to all your channels, including direct. So you can have a 0% markup for direct, and that's accurate because we don't take anything out of your payout. But you could go a negative markup if you want to make it more competitive, or you can do a positive markup if you want your payout to be higher. So you can kind of calibrate how we act as a channel, as a direct channel to your marketplace. Does that make sense?
Andrews, yes, it's early in the morning to digest all that. Is there any place I can read up on? I mean, does Hospitable have a something they can send me, or can you direct me where I can read up on markup rates and what they're for and how to best use them? Because I haven't totally digested that.
Cool. Yeah, if you just jump into the support center in Hospitable and just search markup rates, you'll see at least a couple articles on there. And like Richie said, there's two different strategies. You can say, I want my prices to be equalized across all my channels, or I want my payout to be equalized. So that's generally what we recommend for hospitable is you want to basically, I don't care where they book, my payout's always going to be the same. So I'm going to recover that 3% from Airbnb. I'm going to recover that 17% from booking.com. So I get the same, I get 100% of my payout.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys.
JT, just the way you're thinking about it, when you're thinking about the pay, think about what the guest has to pay, not what you're seeing, right? So when you're seeing that 103%, it is why we are saying it's 117% or 17% is because the guest has to pay. If you have $100 room, the guest has to pay a 14% on top of that, right? So if they come to your website and they see 114. On Airbnb, they see 114%, it's not like they're being in a shock. Of course, you should discount your price to get bookings, etc. Right? Run promotions or run payout parity, like Andrew was saying, whatever. But think of it from the guest perspective of how much they are paying, not just what you're getting.
Yeah, and we do have promo codes too that you can make part of your strategy there. But we're gonna let you go. I think Shifra has shared a couple of articles for you in the chat for markups. And then we've got one last hand that we can get to. So let's see if we can get Magali here online. Okay, Magali, you're on the stage now. If you can unmute yourself, you can get the last question of our webinar in. There you go. We can hear you.
Good morning, guys. I guess I could not properly articulate my question because I'm coming from a realtor's perspective, and I've been a licensed realtor for over 15 years. And I am in Boston, Massachusetts, which is one of the most expensive locations throughout the country. With that being said, I have 5 rental properties and they are within Boston and luxury buildings, luxury amenities, and parking, transportation. But what I see in comparison to what I do everything based on square footage because that's how we calculate everything. And if you have a 2-bedroom apartment, a luxury apartment, and so forth, and you are very comparable to luxury hotels that are offering this just a room and a bathroom, I still see guests trying to negotiate lower. And it's frustrating in that sense. And I think I could relate to the other comment regarding the Gulf area, where you don't want to price it too high, but at the same time, it's like some of these guests are looking for a property where they could pay market rental rate. We have a housing crisis in Massachusetts where rents are already crazy expensive, but then you have guests who are looking for all of the amenities of a home, but still looking for great prices that are below what hotels are charging for a room. It's like the math doesn't make sense. And then you still have to factor in expenses. If you have 5 people in a 1-bedroom apartment, which is ridiculous, you still have to factor in electric bill, water bill, and so forth. And it becomes frustrating. So I guess my frustration is I don't see where the pricing goes, because I think too many people are not educated on how to properly price their property when it comes to market rents and luxuries of traveling, because you can't ask for a home at a market rent when there's a housing crisis. But I don't know. I guess I'm not really articulating it well.
No, I think I hear you. It's not so much a dynamic pricing. I think maybe it's just like a general kind of positioning and maybe looking at where you're attracting customers. I mean, the OTAs, you don't have a lot of control, but definitely with direct, it's kind of what channels are you getting your leads from? Are you, appealing to, I mean, we mentioned Craigslist earlier for, doing inventory. Obviously, that's probably a market that's going to react differently to pricing than, like Google Vacation Rentals, which we're honestly imminently about to release with Direct, or different marketing channels, remarketing the good guests, that aren't going to kind of nickel and dime you. But I mean, Richie, what's your reaction to that?
I think you're always going to find some people somewhere who are going to ask for reduced price or negotiation, right?
Well, these
You
travel
just have to.
nurses, pardon me, these travel nurses are notorious for that, because you can't have a travel nurse who government stipends are between $3,000 to $5,000 per unit. You have 4 travel nurses in a 2-bedroom apartment. Right there, that is about $20,000 that is in there for a housing stipend, but then they want to nickel and dime you and pocket the rest of the money where they're not paying taxes on. So taxpayers are getting screwed 600 ways in that aspect. And then you have and travel nurses, they wash their clothes every single day because of the environment that they're in. So your electric bill, your water bill, all goes up, but they nickel and dime you, and they're very demanding, because if you factor in looking for heat and hot water, electric, utilities, furniture, parking, you're asking for the world on where, from a rental perspective, a realtor perspective, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath with parking on average, with nothing included, is about $3,000 to $4,000 in the primary location. When you have Mass General Hospital, Tufts University, MIT, Brigham and Women's Hospital, when you have all these renowned places and you coming in as a travel nurse who wants to nickel and dime and pocket money that you're not paying taxes, that becomes frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you're really well informed, which is, I think, what you would need to negotiate with these people, and be able to push back and prove, or at least show evidence about what a good value you are providing. I'm not sure if we can really help you more than that, other than, making it clear in your listing that, this is the value I provide. And it sounds like you're very well equipped to negotiate back. We're over time, unfortunately, Magali. I appreciate, honestly, the JT and you both sharing like the unique, specific experiences with host and pricing was a nice way to end it, and really kind of, generic to the specific. It was great to kind of hear those stories. And I'm sorry, it's been kind of a frustrating one for you. But did you have a last comment, Magali, before we let you go?
No, I'm liking Hospitable and PriceLabs. I'm looking forward to grow and make it work better on my end, learn more. It's hard because, again, I'm a full-time realtor, and when you're knowledgeable, it's hard to be nickel and dime.
Yeah, well, don't let yourself be. Thank you so much for that comment. Richie, before I let you go, where can people find out more? What's the best place?
Yeah, I'll drop, I guess, the link to our website. But if you have any questions, reach out to us at support@pricelabs.co. And we'd be happy to help. It's hard to answer specific questions on a webinar because we're not looking at your specific scenario. So JT or Magali or anyone else, right? But reach out to us and we can look at specifics of your scenario and offer some help where we can. Of course, like negotiation strategy is not our skill set. But I'm assuming, Magali, if you're a realtor, negotiation strategy is your bigger skill set than ours.
It was great. It was great to hear that feedback, though. I mean, we also learned from these webinars, and it's great to hear from customers. So we appreciate those of you that had to be up early to get here. Totally appreciate it. Thank you again, Richie, for your time on this. Very much appreciate it. I think we learned a lot. So thank you, and I think we'll end it there. Thank you so much, everyone. This will be up on YouTube if you want to jump back to any piece that you missed. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.